Welcome, friends and foes, survivors and killers. Let's sit around the campfire together and talk about Dead by Daylight. Specifically, the fan favourite femme fatale of Resident Evil, coming to the game with Project W, Ada Wong. Look, I know I haven't talked about many licensed survivors individually. I've covered Yoichi because he's basically half an original character, Tap and Bell got tone, so I got to talk about those, and Quentin because he's just that much of a badass. But whenever I did my licensed retrospectives, I usually bundled the survivor and killer together. On reflection, this was a mistake, especially because the killer got most of the attention in the videos, usually meaning the survivor got shafted more often than not. I don't intend to make that mistake with Project W, in large part because there's so much source material to work with that there's a lot to talk about. And with the electric response to Ada's inclusion in Dead by Daylight, I thought I'd be remiss not to give Danger in a red dress herself the spotlight she deserves. Ada Wong could be most simply described as a spy for hire. She was tasked to infiltrate the Umbrella Pharmaceutical Company on behalf of a corporate rival, the same one which would go on to employ Albert Wesker, and entered a relationship with one Dr. John Clemens to do so, the head of R&D at Umbrella's Arcane Mountains facility. During the T-virus outbreak that killed the facility staff, Clemens fell victim to the infection, but not before leaving behind a letter to Ada, instructing her to destroy the facility and let the public know about the outbreak. Ada would never get the chance to read that letter and wouldn't even learn about Clemens' death until she made her first proper appearance in Resident Evil 2. During the fall of Raccoon City, Ada was assigned to collect a sample of the Golgotha virus, or G virus, from William and Annette Birkin, two Umbrella scientists who led their research into G in Umbrella's nest facility on the outskirts of the city. In doing so, she ran into Leon Kennedy, a rookie cop who she'd saved from the T-103 tyrant pursuing him. After collecting tissue samples from the body of the G-infected William, Ada made her escape shortly before Raccoon City's destruction by thermobaric missiles. She would continue to prove instrumental in her organisation's efforts to undermine and usurp Umbrella as the company started to fall apart, securing the sale of bioweapons to the drug lord Javier Hidalgo in the Darkside Chronicles. At least that's how the myth goes, because I've never played Darkside Chronicles or met anybody else who has, and I guarantee you haven't either. For real, the Darkside Chronicles might be the best game ever made, or it might not even exist, and nobody will be able to tell you for sure because nobody has ever played the Darkside Chronicles and lived to tell the tale. In any case, she would soon cross paths with Leon Kennedy again during the events of Resident Evil 4, where she was dispatched by Wesker to collect a dominant series Plaga parasite from Los Illuminados and kill Leon if he got in her way. She refused to harm Leon, claiming to her superiors that she didn't have the chance to assassinate Leon, and killing Wesker's more loyal subordinate Jack Krauser when he was assigned the task instead. Ada would go on to be an ally to Leon as he sought to save both himself and Ashley from the plagas implanted in them, and despite being kidnapped by Osmond Sadler, Ada would go on to be saved by Leon and prove instrumental in Sadler's final demise. Only once Sadler was dead did Ada make her move. After forcing Leon at gunpoint to hand over Sadler's dominant series Plaga sample, Ada made her escape, but left Leon the keys to a jet ski to allow him and Ashley to get out of there as well. Reuniting with Leon seemed to have awakened more of a moral compass in Ada, as she kept the dominant series Plaga for herself and gave Wesker a recessive series Plaga instead, to limit how far his research could take him. While this did slow him down for a time, Wesker retrieved the dominant series Plaga from the body of Jack Krauser, allowing him to unleash the Plaga parasite in the Kijuju Autonomous Zone in Resident Evil 5 and forcing Ada to go into hiding. After Wesker's death at the hands of a certain boulder-punching asshole, you might believe Ada was safe and sound. But a figure from her past whose obsession with her had grown and grown would mean she wasn't out of the woods yet. Unfortunately, talking about it will require me to acknowledge the existence of Resident Evil 6. Something I've always disagreed with for religious reasons. If you or someone you love has been harmed by RE6, maybe you've had to play it for example, I have linked a site where you can get support in the description. One of Ada's former employers, a US government higher up named Derek Simmons, had grown, attached to her, let's say. And when she turned him down, he started to funnel money into Project Ada, a research program dedicated to creating a perfect duplicate of Ada Wong who would remain loyal to him. Straight up, this has to be easily the most incel thing in Resident Evil canon, which is impressive when the series' main villain, dressed like Elon Musk's My Chemical Romance cosplay, and Lucas Baker exists. Simmons ended up transforming Carla Radames, the head researcher for Project Ada, into his perfect copy, exploiting her feelings for him to turn her into his Ada in a weird cloning and reprogramming fucking love triangle. When Carla breaks free of Simmons' brainwashing, she doesn't take the fact that he effectively erased her identity and abused her affections for him to manipulate her all too well. Posing as Ada, she uses Simmons' resources to begin a plot for global destruction with the C virus. The virus Simmons used to turn her into Ada in the first place, and begins a campaign of destruction across the world, coming closer to destroying the world than Wesker or any other villain in the franchise ever did before being killed by the real Ada. The one loose end Carla didn't manage to clear out. RE6 was the most recent game aside from remakes that Ada had made an appearance in, but concept art does exist of her that showed she was planned for an appearance in Resident Evil Village, and she may still appear in one of the DLCs for that game in the future. She's a definite fan favourite, and that's reflected by Capcom's love for her too, as she appears in more or less every game Leon does and beats out both Claire and Jill to be the most commonly recurring female character in the whole franchise. There's a couple of reasons for that. The first being that she's largely spared the poor fate typical of Resident Evil supporting characters, where they either die, exist to provide one useful function that stifles their ability to be full characters, or both. The former coming immediately after the latter. But I think the biggest help Ada has in being a supporting character that we remember is the fact that of the main 5 protagonists of RE history, she's one of maybe 2 who actually has an arc. Gotta whisper this bit, or else the others are gonna start wanting one as well. All jokes aside, Ada's arc is possibly the most satisfying long-term character growth in the whole series, other than maybe Leon. And the reason they both have this is because their arcs directly complement each other. Ada's recurring presence in Leon's life hardens him in every sense of the word. He comes out of every encounter with Ada more experienced, and capable of handling the matter responsibilities that he takes onto his shoulders. Whether that's because her manipulations constantly expose him to greater evils at work in the bigger picture, or because her getting endlessly captured or incapacitated becomes a moment for him to prove his worth as the badass man of action he grows into across the series. But Leon profoundly affects Ada too. Her first appearance has her lie repeatedly to Leon's face about her identity and motives, and turn on him as soon as she's gotten what she wants. When she turns that gun on him, much as she doesn't want to hurt him, you can tell there's not a lot of doubt in what she's doing in her mind. She has a job to do, and she's doing it in the least messy way possible. It's also plausible there's an element of pity to it. Ada spends most of the game acting like Leon's some innocent, harmless little meow meow who's too naive and inexperienced for her murky, morally grey world of corporate espionage. A point of view that's not entirely wrong, because it is his literal first day on the job, and her first meeting with him involved saving his life from an infected dog. At this point, Ada's reluctance to harm him could be played off as a desire to not unnecessarily harm innocents in pursuit of her task, as opposed to any personal attachment to Leon or creation of any real moral code. Her next encounter with Leon in Resident Evil 4 flips that idea on its head and illustrates Ada's gradual trajectory from an anti-villain and more into a true hero. The Leon of Resident Evil 4 is more experienced and willing to harm others to complete his mission, compared to his rookie spirit in RE2. In a way, he's become more like Ada. When Wesker is made aware of Leon's involvement in Ashley's recovery from Los Illuminados, Ada's mission to recover a dominant Ceres Plaga becomes complicated. Ada is initially ordered to kill Leon due to the risk his presence poses to her mission's success, but refuses, claiming to Wesker that she didn't get the chance. That plausible deniability completely disintegrates when Jack Krauser, who's completely loyal to Wesker, is assigned to kill Leon in Ada's place. Ada could have just let Krauser kill Leon, washing her hands of any guilt associated with it save for the knowledge she wasn't the one who pulled the trigger. But for the first time in the series, Ada genuinely sticks out her neck for Leon and actively chooses to protect him from Krauser, saving his life and putting herself and Krauser in Wesker's firing line. Ada would continue to be an ally to Leon up until the deaths of first Krauser and then Osmond Sadler. This is the point in Ada's story in which she's taken by the entity in Dead by Daylight's lore for her, which is interesting given that visually at least, she's a carbon copy of her appearance in the Resident Evil 2 remake. Actually, that's all her DVD lore tells us about Ada at all. Everything else is just telling us what we don't know instead of what we do know. And while I really don't mind it because it fits for a character as mysterious as Ada, I wish she got a little something that at least acknowledged that Resident Evil 2 existed and what role she played in it. I do get why they positioned Ada at her RE4 stage instead of RE2 though. By the time of RE4, she's older, more experienced, and also has a stronger moral compass due to the influence of Leon, making her a more rootable character, and being a little sneaky promo for the Resident Evil 4 remake coming next year as well. You might think RE4 marks Ada's transformation into a true blue heroine, right? Well, not quite. At the end of the day, she's a professional with a job to do, and RE4 ends with her once again holding Leon at gunpoint, taking what she needs from him and running. But there's a few important differences to reflect her development throughout RE4. In RE2, Ada doesn't harm Leon but more or less leads him to his own devices, making her escape from Raccoon City before the city is destroyed. But in RE4, Ada gives Leon the means to escape even once her job has been done. Continuous exposure to Leon is shown to make Ada into a better person, and the conflict she has in RE4 between her professionalism and her loyalty is the perfect showcase of that freshly grown conscience. This is where Resident Evil 6, Ada's most recent non-remake appearance, picked her up, and it looked set to continue this arc in a satisfying way. RE6 is easily the most Ada-centric story to date, with Simmons' attempt to create his own Ada being a catalyst for the game's main conflict. But sadly, Ada herself doesn't really get to change or feel like a person in this installment despite being physically present and doing lots of things to advance the game's overall plot. She changes the game, but the game doesn't change her, and it makes her appearance feel cartoonish, like she's not a part of the same world inhabited by the other characters. Compare how the game treats her to how it treats Leon, for example. Leon's introduced as the physical incarnation of angst, with his new scraggly little beard and long hair fitting with his periods of brooding about how hard his life is, constantly fighting bioweapons and saving the world. But with the rise of the fake Ada and Neo Umbrella, Leon is dragged back into the fray in large part to clear Ada's name. This time, Ada is making Leon good, and regardless of how well it was executed, the idea at least does something with the character. Ada, on the other hand, is effectively an afterthought. Her campaign in RE6 is mostly in isolation of the rest of the cast, and despite her obsessive stalker and murderous doppelganger being the main antagonists of the game, Ada isn't really given enough time with either of those characters to make that rivalry mean anything. Part of this, I think, was Capcom's desire to obscure the fact that the leader of Neo Umbrella wasn't in fact the real Ada, which, let's be honest, was Capcom massively overestimating their own ability to create a compelling mystery. I'm sorry, but if you actually believed Capcom had turned Ada into the main villain of RE6, then I have a Nigerian prince I'd like you to meet. Capcom's insistence on keeping this non-mystery about the fake Ada intact meant that the real Ada got sidelined in what should have been her story. Ada is objectified by RE6 very badly, and I don't mean that as what you'd normally imagine when you say objectify. She's not a sex object so much as a plot device, an object being moved around and fought over to make the game's story work. If anything, Simmons is presented as a rival to Leon, fighting him to win over Ada, as if he ever meant anything to Ada, instead of putting him in opposition to the woman he's murderously obsessed with, and who has every reason to despise him. RE6's treatment of Ada's story can be summed up like this. Look at how this man, completely obsessed with a woman who will never love him, destroyed thousands of lives and manipulated those close to him to fulfill his twisted fantasy of owning her like property. Let's show how upset that made her boyfriend. While Ada does get a boss fight with Simmons, it's worth remembering she's mostly just framed as helping Leon, and doesn't get that much dialogue with Simmons. At least not as much as the two characters who fuel the entire game's central conflict really should have. He talks at her a lot, but Ada stays mostly silent until Leon rocks up. And she doesn't even stick around to finish Simmons off, just leaving it for Leon and more or less vanishing from the story after that. There are so many reasons to hate RE6, and the treatment of Ada is one of the big ones. One of the biggest reasons I dislike RE5 is because it allowed RE6 to exist. God, I fucking despise RE6 so much. What a fucking embarrassment to the franchise. Oh, hang on, sorry, I just gotta take this.
Hey, Pixel, what's going on?
Hey, Sofa, what a surprise. How have you been, man?
Not too bad. Did I catch you at a bad time?
No, not really. I've just been working on this Ada Wong video, talking about, Resident Evil 6 at the moment.
God, I'm sorry for your loss.
Thanks for your sympathy, it means a lot.
Wait, you're talking about DVD in this one, right? You're not just using your Resident Evil video as an excuse to complain about games you don't like again, are you?
No, absolutely not.
Are you sure? Because I'm smelling something suspicious here.
Carbon monoxide?
Bullshit, Pixel. I can smell it down the phone line.
Right, okay, calm down. I haven't gone on a rant. I promise. But just in case I have, I'm just going to go back in the video, double check, and make sure I haven't done it. Just to be sure. Just to be sure. I promise I haven't done a rant, okay? No ranting from me. Never happened. No.
Okay, you do that.
Right, okay. See you later. Not gonna lie there, I'm feeling a bit called out. Since Ada's DBD lore is pretty thin on the ground, it's down to her perks to characterise her in a way that's consistent with how she's presented in Resident Evil. And I'd say they do a pretty good job of that. If there's one word I could use to describe Ada's perks, I would say they're, subtle. Especially in comparison to her Resident Evil predecessors, Jill and Leon. The most obvious point of comparison is the generator progress perks. All three of them have a perk that gives them a gadget when they do generators. Leon gets a flashbang, and Jill gets a trap that blinds and stuns the killer when the generator is kicked. Both of these are weapons. Unsubtle tools of aggression against the killer. Ada gets wiretap, the ability to bug a generator and monitor the killer's movements near it. While it's not as obviously powerful as a weapon, it's harder to detect and provides crucial information. The design perfectly reflects Ada's use of high-tech gadgetry, not to blast through bioweapons and zombies, but to manoeuvre through her missions with discretion, precision and finesse. A scalpel, not a chainsaw. Low profile also fits very well. A spy with a stealth perk who'd be fucking surprised, but is nothing really to write home about, in my opinion, beyond behaviour's absolutely rampant feet obsession claiming yet another victim. Reactive healing is where it starts to get interesting though. Because worth remembering that in all of Ada's major appearances she tends to come off better than basically anyone else, despite the massive carnage that typically ensues. Raccoon City is destroyed in Resident Evil 2, but Ada's mission goes without a hitch. Ada crosses Albert Wesker twice on her mission to claim the Plaga from RE4 and gets off scot-free. And she ends RE6 with the BSCA thinking that she's dead, something that in her line of work must be very helpful. Reactive healing plays off that a bit as she benefits directly from those around her being in peril in a similar way to low profile. Ada Wong pretty much defines what it is to be a fan favourite character. Despite being a secondary protagonist and anti-villain in all of her appearances, she's one of Resident Evil's most popular and recognisable characters. I'm glad she made it into Dead by Daylight. Her and Leon's relationship is one of the emotional cores of both characters' lives, and it's very telling that the games that kept them together are well remembered, while the game that split them up into separate stories almost killed RE as a franchise. Ada serves as a reminder of the corporate side of Resident Evil's villain suite, because at the end of the day the real monsters aren't the bioweapons or the zombies, they're the people at Umbrella and other companies just like them who made them that way. Ada is the weapon of the wealthy, who's nevertheless pulled further and further from selfishness throughout the course of her arc without losing that professionalism that makes her recognisable. I do wish she had a little more to work with in terms of story, but I shouldn't really expect any miracles from a Resident Evil character at this point, so, you know, she's good. Nothing crazy, but Ada fans are going to love it, and that's the main thing that matters anyway. So that's everything I have to say about the agent known as Ada Wong. Hope you enjoyed the video. If it does well, I'm definitely inclined to go back and look at some of the other RE characters I may have skipped out on, because there's quite a few I'd like to talk about. If you want to make sure you don't miss it, please do subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, ring the little notification bell so you don't miss the next upload, which, by the way, coming sooner than you think. In the meantime, you can check out my Twitter, my Twitch, and my Discord server using the links in the description, along with my Patreon, if you think my content deserves your money. Patrons already saw this video a day early, so if you want to be part of Early Access Gang and get some other sweet perks as well, the link is right there for you. I've got some weird videos in the pipeline, but I hope they're going to do well and I cannot wait to show them off. Till then, I'll see you next time. Ta-ta for now.